Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. My name is OctoMan, and this is today another live stream about how to create, well, kind of, Burntime 3D. I'm gonna continue wherever we have left in the last part on the last session, where we basically took care of the actual camera movement. So the camera is now actually walking or actually following the player on the X and the Z plane. Nothing fancy at all. Then we already, or I already created the possibility to go into buildings or even interact with other things, which we are probably created in part number 3, I believe. And today I want to take a look into scene management. So meaning we're gonna have later on multiple scenes we want to load, but we want to keep things active or even inactive based on different things. For example, my timer in the bottom where it says, okay, the day is the current day is going to be 1. We want to keep on reducing time, for example, but we want to do this no matter where we are, like no matter in which scene we basically are. And to do so, we're gonna need to split the actual functionalities quite a bit. So we want to make sure that the functionality about the day and daytime is going to be basically running in an extra session or an extra game scene, no matter if we are like in a town scene like this, if we are later on a world map, if we are in an inventory system, or even in any of these buildings to place our items into, and so on and so forth. So, but before we go and do so, I want to once again let you know that you can go down below in the description box and grab your free PDF how to create or how to finish your game. So 3 strategies for you to finish your game, as well as check out also all the courses I have to offer into the description box down below. If you have any questions meanwhile these streams are running or even afterwards, feel free to send me them directly into the chat or even down below in the comment section. That is completely up to you. I will not answer comments, of course, inside the live stream, but of course I'm gonna go and answer questions in the chat. Good. With that out of the way, let's get started. So once again, I want to make sure that this little day system is going to run in a different scene, and also I want to have that so that it is like not intersecting with anything. Also, we're gonna probably put something together where when we are entering one of these buildings that we are loading and unloading. I already explained that a bit. This completely. Maybe we're gonna create some nice, let's say, transition. So it's looking a bit different to other games. We can use something like fade in, fade out animations and so on and so forth. That is something, but another design decision we're gonna do later on. So what I want to do first is I want to create a new empty scene basically, and I'm gonna keep the or leave this alone for just a sec. So I'm gonna say new scene, and I want to name this. I'm gonna already save that. Save scene or save as. And I'm gonna do this probably off screen once again. Yep, there we go. I just named this one, let's say, game manager scene or something, or this is like going to be the main scene of everything. I'm gonna give you an idea behind this in just a sec. So let me name this main scene, and I'm gonna save this. So what is the main scene about? Is probably I'm gonna bring up some Inkscape for a sec, so I can explain what I'm going to do today or what I try to achieve. So it's going to take a second. So basically, what we want to have is we want to have like a main scene which is being the master of everything. So I'm gonna paint this. Let's assume this is going to be my main scene. So everything about the main content, like main scene, um, every other scene is going to be like directly inside the scene loaded. Okay, so let's assume we have scene number 1 or the town scene or whatever. I'm gonna tint this maybe red. I want to make sure that I bring this inside the main scene. I want to load this inside this main scene so it's keeping active as it is. Once I want to go into a building, for example, I'm gonna make another one with a green. I want to enter a building from this scene. What I do is I load this one in here and unload the other one, the other active one. But meanwhile, I'm going to do this. I want to keep the daytime system active. So I want to have like maybe the bar at the bottom. We can, for example, overlay it with something or just unhide it or hide it for a second. Meanwhile, we are doing this transitioning between those scenes. So once again, we want to be or want to have the possibility to go in and go out to the scenes from wherever point we want, and we need to have a system like sitting directly in the main scene, which is doing all of that. And meanwhile we do so, we do not intersect the functionality of the daytime. And also we can do the same with audio, with score, with inventory, with everything. Hey Scaleman, thanks a lot for tuning in. I hope you gonna learn even more content, yeah, more nice stuff today. Hopefully, we'll see. And so we're gonna load all the information inside, like everything about the main idea, like the once again the music, the score, the inventory. We're gonna keep that in the main scene, and we just put scenes over here or over there. We can also do something like multi-scene loading if necessary, but in this case I don't think so. We could even take our inventory and put this into an extra scene and just load the inventory whenever we need it, load it into the current active scene just by overlaying, and then unload it if we don't need this anymore. So once again, this over here always stays inside the main scene. So that's what we're gonna do today. So I'm gonna keep or create this new main scene right now. So what I wanna do is I wanna set everything up so it works. I'm gonna give you a checkout for that, or I'm gonna give you an idea how I wanna make use of that. So in the last part, were creating this nice canvas here with this day bar, as well as all the corresponding necessary content, like this one, like there was just a canvas, and again the background and the bar and so on and so forth by scaling this one downwards based on the current time. What I'm gonna do is just for the moment, or what I can show you right now, what a super nice thing is, we're gonna now drag the main scene into the hierarchy. What you can see now, it of course has its own camera, so we see that now from another angle of view basically, so because we have like another directional light, another camera. We don't need them, but what we need to do is we just take now our canvas, which we created in the last part, and we drag this inside the main scene. So as you can see, we can still see that, but it is not anymore in our actual current active scene. So we now have two active scenes, the area 1 with an asterisk behind it. It means we haven't saved it yet, and we have the main scene active. And that's what we're gonna do in the future. So I'm gonna keep the canvas with the complete stuff over here inside another scene, like in the main scene. What I wanna do is I wanna get rid of the main camera from the main scene, as well as the directional light, because we have a light already here inside our area 1. Good. Now you can see everything looks the same, and I'm gonna save now the main scene. I'm gonna keep it in as is. I just select or Control S for quick save both, and when I now go and press play, I should see that the bar is still reducing over time, even if it is in complete other scene. So now you can see the system works the same. The canvas is just somewhere else, but not in our main scene, and we should be able to still interact with things. Like here, we would go into the abandoned building or building a house. We could do damage to the enemy and even talk to the merchant if we want to. So with that out of the way, we now want to have a system where the main scene keeps consistently running, and we are loading like area 1, the building itself, and so on and so forth. So the main scene is always active, and the other scenes are basically just loaded in and loaded out however we want to. What we can do now is we can say that this scene is getting unloaded. We can also remove it, like so. But as you can see, the main camera or the main scene does not have anything at the moment to deliver. There's no camera inside. And even that, we basically don't, I guess, we don't need any. And if we do so, then we're gonna put the main camera over here, but I believe we don't need to. So what we now need is a system which is doing so that it is loading area 01 at start of our game, right? So for that, we're gonna create like a game handler or a game manager. You can name it whatever you like, or you like. I'm gonna name this game manager. And the game manager later on gets multiple sub-objects or sub-scripts. In this case, we just want to make sure that we create a loading and unloading functionality, which we can just actually talk to at any case. I'm gonna create a script for this. Later on, I'm gonna go and sort out all of that. And this is going to be my scene, let's say handler or something like that. Handler. And I want to make sure that it is part of the game manager once the compiler is done running. There we go. So I drag scene handler over here. And later on, we want to just talk to scene handler at any time, at any point. We want to call scene handler to do whatever we want to do. So I'm going to load up my mono-develop or Visual Studio, whatever you need and like. And once all has been loaded, I, for the moment, get rid of sudden update and we're gonna start rather fresh over here. First, we want to make sure that we always have access to scene handler, no matter in which scene we are, no matter which one is active or inactive or whatever. And since we don't really deactivate any scenes, we just load and unload them by necessary times. We want to make sure that the scene manager or the scene handler in here is going to be something like a static, always accessible class. In that case, we're going to make this a public static scene handler like this, and we give it just a name, something like instance. In awake, like public. No, it's not doesn't need to be public. In just in void awake, we want to make sure that we make this instance being the only instant in this instance in this case. So instance is equal to this. So now we can always talk to the scene handler and do whatever we have provided over here. We can now load in a scene. We can unload a scene whenever necessary, and this way we can handle all or multiple scenes at the same time, or even just one scene at a time. So now we need to have like two functions which are doing the content for us, like loading and unloading. Probably I'm gonna change my mind later on by the actual handling, but these functions over here, they need to be public so we can access them from any point in the game, and we are just talking to the scene handler instance and call the load or unload functionality. In that case, we want to, or we need to have a string parameter, which is going to be the scene name we want to load. Scene name. Maybe with a big N can be seen better. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that if the scene has not been loaded, that we are loading the scene by its scene name, basically additive to the current scene. So we now need to implement this scene manager, since the scene manager is not part of MonoBaby directly. So we're going to implement the namespace using Unity Engine .scene management. Otherwise, once again, no access. So what we now can do is we can now check if scene management or scene manager dot, and now we're gonna request the active, or not the active scene, but a scene by a name. So if scene manager get active scene, no, it's not scene, it's scene by name. If get scene by name, then we can put in the scene name actually. Dot is loaded. But we want to do it so that if it is not loaded, so we put an exclamation mark in front of it. We can also say it's equal to false. If that is the case, we want to load the actual scene we want to load. So we say scene manager dot load scene. We can, once again, there are multiple possibilities to do that, like loading this one asynchronously would be also an option over there. But for the moment, we just take it as is. So we're going to say scene name is the one we want to load. And then we're going to say load scene mode. And this needs to be set to be additive. So we add the newly to load scene to our current active scene. So in this case, the main scene over here. Now we want to do it so that when a scene is loaded and we want to unload it, that we are actually able to do this. So I'm going to copy this and paste it over here. And in here we want to name it just unload by the scene name. So we have the possibility to take it away from the currently loaded stack basically And then we're gonna say if it has been loaded, like over here, we just take away the exclamation mark. We want to unload the scene. So unload scene. We can also do this asynchronously, but we don't need to say the actual loading mode, I guess. So let's see if there's something wrong. The string is use scene manager you unload scene async. This function is not safe to use during triggers and under other okay, so we're gonna use unload scene asynchronously in this case. So whenever we unload, then we do this asynchronously. It doesn't really need to be like on spot. We just do it whenever, let's say, necessary over here. Okay, so with that said, we're gonna save the script, and we have now the possibility to just call these functions from wherever. Well, we should be able to load and unload the necessary functionalities at any point. For example, we can do in awake or in start. Let me do this in start because it's only run once anyways. In start, we should be able to now load asynchronously or just normally the actual game scene, like our area 001, or whichever scene we want at the very start. So in that case, we just call load, open those parentheses, and give it our name. I guess it's area 001. That's it. And now we should be able to load inside our current scene this actual area 001. Let's take a look if I'm right or wrong with the name. Let the compiler run, see if there's any problems. As you can see, area 001. So what we now need to do is we need to put all of that content into the build settings, of course, otherwise it doesn't work. So my main scene is the first scene to load, at least for the moment. Later on there will be like an introduction, ace, whatever. And then area 001 needs to be like at least a second. I'm gonna save everything, like I save my script and stuff and my scene, and press play and see what's happening now. So as you can see, the light is wrong. The light is darker, but that's normal because the light has not been baked. So we later on need to take a look into light baking or setting something active or inactive. But as you can see, we have had an empty scene with just the loading possibility and load the scene we want to load here. Let's assume we later on want to go into this particular building and do whatever is possible. We can. We can now just say, okay, we unload this particular scene, like the area 001. We probably want to remember where we come from, so we can put our character back to the position where he has been before changing the scene. So we need to create some kind of a construction or a construct where we are having the possibility to remember where do we have been, what was the last thing we were entering, and what is the point where we want to basically transition later on back to actually get a feel, okay, something was working as it should, and so on. So we set later on the player also onto the correct position back where it has been. If necessary, we can also store the last position of the player before a scene switch, like when we have been inside some kind of a town, I would say. We're gonna need to think about that a bit later on. When we have been inside a town and we are entering a building, maybe we're gonna set a bool or something, then we store the vector of the actual player, and then we later on set it back where it came from. So we do this like on screen or on load and so on and so forth. So that works. So what we now want to do is, or what I want to do is, I want to create another scene now where we have the possibility to just place content inside. We might not need a player, an active player, but I'm gonna make a scene where a building is inside, so we can see that this system still runs, and I guess you got the idea behind it, as well as we have the possibility to go back where we came from. And once again, this is like where we can like create hundreds or even thousands of different scenes. We just need to make sure that we connect them correctly with the triggering, and so that whenever we hit a specific trigger, we just call the actual scene handler script to load or even unload. We're gonna take a look into that in a second. Any questions so far, then feel free to once again put them inside the chat or wherever you like to. Otherwise, we go forward. I'm gonna create a new scene meanwhile. So I'm gonna say new scene, and I'm gonna put like any 3D model with one of the buildings where doors inside, like this one. I'm gonna put this first off into my scene. Basically, the rotation and stuff like that doesn't really matter. And I need to find a way, of course, later on to navigate back. So first off, I want to make sure that my camera is going to sit inside. Somehow the lighting doesn't build or doesn't render automatically, so I'm gonna open the lighting tab pretty quick. Usually it's like next to my inspector, but I believe I closed it for whatever reason. Where is it? Rendering, lighting settings, and we can now say auto generate lighting, so it auto generates like the baked maps basically. So what I want to do is I want to place my camera like over here, like whenever we enter this building, that we maybe just see the back side of a building. Maybe later on I'm gonna put some objects inside. Once again, I want to also place stuff anyways inside, like when we are going to put water bottles or a knife or any items onto the ground, that we are actually able to do that. But for the moment it doesn't really matter. We just want to put our camera there, and probably later on a button which is showcasing that we are able to load back to where we came from as an example, and we're gonna store this information over here. So now you can see I just created the camera, made it inside the building. Probably I'm gonna change the lighting a bit so we see a bit more of the room. Or maybe not too shabby. Later on I go into the design phase, but for the moment it doesn't really matter. We just want to have like a room which we can load, or a scene we can load. I'm gonna save the scene. Gonna do this off screen again. Super simple, nothing fancy. I'm gonna name this. Maybe it is easier to say it is like in case of naming convention that you know which building is connected to what. You're probably gonna do something like area 001, and then you're gonna put maybe something like building 01 or something like that. Maybe with an maybe you find a good naming convention for that. Why? Because you want to make sure that this building over here does have always a connection to the correct area, so you always know where this one has been connected to or from. I just need to we just need to find a good one. Maybe I'm gonna rename this again if I can I do this from here? Maybe I could just name it B01, like for building. Gonna reload the scene, of course, so it is correct. Good. So now I copy this name. And now we want to make sure that whenever we are like inside our other scene, like in area 1, there's our nav mesh baked in. When we now hit the actual trigger, or the trigger collider, this one here, if we are hitting this, we want to call our load function inside our game management system. We can only do this, of course, when it is loaded, so we need to make sure that we are always testing stuff inside or from our main scene, or that the main scene at least is going to be active. So we can now put in the scene we want to do load and the scene we want to unload. And for that, we need to create another script, of course, which is triggering the scene handling at all. So I'm gonna name this something like scene load trigger or something, maybe. Scene load trigger. And that will be on each of our door triggers to actually get it active over here. Now that this one has been loaded, we're gonna need to put in some code which is now handling the loading and unloading by just calling that, and probably give us some small amount of time before we are actually doing all of that. So, meaning we first off need to make sure that we have like a on trigger event. So So we're gonna, once again, we set this onto our onTrigger event. And probably we also, or we need to have some strings which need to be public. So we're gonna have something like the scene we want to load and the scene we want to unload. So scene to load. So we need to put this later on inside each of these triggers, and then we have something like a public string scene to unload. So we want to make sure that we unload the scene where we're coming from. Oh, not with exclamation, or not with parentheses. So what we now can do is we can create a new onTrigger event. So void onTrigger enter. So whenever we are entering the trigger of the collider where this one is in, onTrigger enter, we just give it any collider COL. Basically, it doesn't matter. So whatever we are colliding with, we can also check if that is the player and not any NPC. Probably that's not a bad idea. So I'm gonna make a note, at least for the moment. Check if player is entering this. But what we want to make sure is that at first we want to make sure that scene to load is actually has any string inside, and if it has no string, then we're gonna put like if it is necessary. The question is always if some checks are going to be necessary over here. So if we forgot probably to put something inside, that's maybe not a good idea to have this over there. And same for the unload. So if we forgot to put in any informations about that, then we may wanna just maybe there's the possibility or something necessary to unload specific scenes. Let's do that. If scene to load is not equal to quotes, so basically to like an empty string. If that is not empty, then we want to change, or we want to load the scene by using our scene handler instance. So scene handler.instance, and now we can call the actual load functionality. We pass in the string name, whichever scene we want to load from this one, and that should be it. So what we're going to do is we're going to say load. We can also rename the function to be load scene. And now we want to put in this as a parameter over here. So this is the scene we want to load. But we only once again want to do this if we have like no empty string over here. Otherwise we don't want to react to it. And once again, probably later on we're going to put this into a player check. So if the player is colliding with that, and not anyone is going to do that. And that's probably one of the most interesting things we're going to later on do, because we might have roaming enemies or roaming merchants or roaming whatever that or roaming characters in general, that we need to make sure that we are only checking for the player. At the moment it doesn't matter, but in the end we're gonna change that soon, no matter what. So same for unload. So if unload is actually like if scene to unload is not equal to null or not equal to an empty string basically, then we wanna say scene handler unload scene. But the point is we probably want to wait a second or two. So we're gonna have the time to load this particular scene over here, and then we're gonna wait like for maybe 10 milliseconds or 5 milliseconds or 50 milliseconds before we are going to unload that. Otherwise we might have a bad transition between those scenes, or maybe this has been unloaded already before this one has been loaded. That's, by the way, where asynchronously loading can be interesting. So to get some time-based action, we can basically implement a coroutine, as you already have learned, I hope so. So we're going to create a new enumerator and name this one unload scene. And basically we're gonna fill no data inside, because the data is already inside, so we don't need to have any parameters inside over here. Now we wait, so yield return wait. We can also say something like wait until the other scene has been loaded, once again depending on how we set this one up in the end. For the moment we just wait for seconds and say something like 0.5 or 0.5f, something like that maybe, and then we want to do the actual unload. yield return. Oh, there's a new keyword missing. New, wait for seconds. And now we want to do the actual scene handler dot, and now we want to unload the actual scene. Of course, we need to talk to the instance first. Dot instance dot unload, and now we're gonna pass in the scene to unload parameter inside over here. And from that point, whenever we want to unload this, we want to make sure that we gonna start the coroutine over there. So start coroutine, open close parentheses, and in here we just call unload scene. We can put this in quotes as I already explained, or we can also say something like unload scene, open close parentheses, and that should be it. I hope that works, because it can, or probably it happens that not both are going to fire whenever we are loading this and unloading that. Probably there is some issue with that. So, but we're gonna see that in a second. So whenever the compiler is done running, I want to select this actual cube over here, which should trigger the actual information about the scene to load. So as you can see, we already have created something like a scene loader. Oh no, I dragged this already in here, it seems. Or did we create this one already? Aha, I implemented this one into the interactability. So this scene load trigger needs to be inside our scene loader in this case. So I forgot about it. So we basically do the same, but calling this one from the interact override method over there. Which is fine, so we don't need to have the on trigger event. Okay, so let me go in pretty quick. And instead of using on trigger enter over there, we just use a public override void interact, I guess. Hi Tanmei, can you make a video on configurable joint, as any physics joint can be built using Unity documentation does not provide clear description? Probably I can. But at the moment, these configurable, I have no reason to like how do what do I need those for? So if you have like an idea what I can make use of that, then you probably wanna give me some idea for what reason you're gonna need a configurable joint. So usually you use that in like flippers from a pinball game or something like that, but I cannot see any other purpose at the moment. So if you find any, or if you have any more specific idea, please try to explain what and why. Also, you can go to the actual community page, I guess, or whatever it's called, where you can I have a thread over there where you can put in your requests with maybe a bit more specific details about it. So check out the YouTube channel community tab. I guess that's where it should be. So instead of using on trigger enter, I wanna make use of the on trigger enter. Once again, is not necessary. We get rid of that, but we want to make sure that we say public override void interact and interact is only possible to make use of when we are deriving interactable like this. So we can still do the same. We're gonna derive from interactable. We're gonna now, instead of using on trigger enter, which we usually would do, we just derive from interactable. And whenever we are interacting with that collision object, basically, like the other way was, where's my solution box? Let's see if I can anyhow load it. There was the scene loader, and we basically did the same over here. So we have like, or had the scene to load, and basically we could also override this one, so we don't need to drag stuff in here. So, but the idea is the same. we're gonna determine which scene we want to load or even unload in that case, and we just call the same function. So in this case, I created now the scene load trigger, like a more, yeah, actually useless for that part, but I now just switch these functionalities or these scripts. I'm gonna save the trigger scene over here, and I'm gonna put this now onto the actual green box. Gonna put the scene trigger here. I'm gonna get rid of the other one because it doesn't make sense to have it here. And over here we're gonna copy now the actual scene where we are coming from or where we want to go to, and put this like as a parameter now, as a string parameter over here. So the scene to load is going to be area 001, and the scene to unload, no, it's vice versa, and the scene to unload is going to be 001, of course, and the first one is the B01. I'm gonna save that, and I go back to my main scene and see what's going on over here. So first, I want to make sure that I, of course, am able to go inside the scene. And when I now interact with that box, like whenever we are close to it or close enough to it, we should load the other scene. But as you can see, this area 001B1 is not inside the build, so we cannot load it. So we go once again back into my build settings, and we're going to put in this one into the build. This is necessary, once again, otherwise the the loading cannot work because it doesn't know about the scene. Let's try it out. So as you have seen, for a second the camera switches kind of strangely, and now what we're gonna have is only the area 01B1 loaded over here inside our main scene, and the other scene has been completely unloaded over here. Of course, once again, same issue, we don't have any light bakes. We're going to talk about this later on, even if probably in the build not even necessary, but of course save some time in the end. And basically we can now go back where we came from by, for example, when we are using a button somewhere, which we can easily do. For example, we just put an arrow button in the bottom in our user interface or somewhere, and then we're going to do this. What you also can see is that the day one is still inside the scene. So we now have a system which is running other scenes basically. Meanwhile, we want to, meanwhile we are inside our main scene, the game or the timer runs, goes forward, increases later on, and we can put in or go anywhere we like to. So this was actually the most important step I wanted to cover over here. So I have now the possibility once again to put in and take away scenes inside our main scene over here, so we can keep consistent stuff running over there. There was an information about that that there are like 2 audio listeners inside the scene. If we don't really need multiple audio listeners, and we don't necessarily have to, because currently these are connected to the cameras, for a split seconds we're gonna have 2 of those. As you can see, like it's called or gets called 53 times. So we basically can get rid of all the unnecessary audio listeners later on by, for example, we're gonna keep the audio fully inside our main scene. So we're gonna have create our complete audio system in here, maybe on the game manager or just an audio manager. And whenever we switch scene, we can also fade in, fade out audio, like music and stuff like that. But we keep the actual access point to the audio manager later on directly here, maybe directly once again onto the game manager, or even on a separated object. So once again, whenever we load a game or load a scene, that's what we're gonna start off. Once again, there's no light bake since that is so dark over here. We could now load this. We can load our actual music. We're gonna increase volume over time, whatever. And whenever we go inside a building over here, we unload everything and get back to where we want to be. Once again, the audio listener over here is going to fire only because there have been 2 audio listeners based on the main camera in both settings, like in this setting and in the other one. Good, and that's basically everything I wanted to cover today. So we're gonna have a rather solid way to do that. Maybe we're gonna go and figure out some transitions later on, like maybe in the next part, so we can do something like a smooth transition between one and the other scene. So we're gonna put some like a fade in and fade out whenever we load and unload scenes, or we gonna like we wait until that is done, and after the animation is done or the fade is done, that we then start to load and unload scenes, so we don't have like all the problems over here, and we have enough time to make use of all of that. Pretty good. So once again, later on, when we want to go outside of our area 01, back from this point over here, we can easily do this by once again creating another canvas over here, which has an arrow sitting on, as well as the actual scenes to get back. Let me put something together like that. I believe that will conclude like a complete back and forth scenario over here. We can also put our character anywhere in a corner if necessary, but I don't see a point to have that. And of course, later on we need to reset or set the character into the correct position whenever we leave that. But that's once again another part we're gonna take a look into. So for now, I would just go and create a new, maybe a button. And this button, we first off want to make sure that the canvas is screen space overlay, as well as constant pixel size, nope, but scale with screen size. I'm gonna go into 2D mode and zoom out quite a bit, like so. Gonna make sure that the button is like anywhere where nothing else is going to be connected to, so we don't overlay like our day button stuff over there. We can also put it anywhere else. We're gonna make it maybe a bit bigger, a bit more prominent, so we know that we can basically leave over here, and we can put like any graphic on it. You can also make use of an image or something like that, but a button of course is rather easy. And here we're gonna say something like back to wherever we came from, or we're gonna once again make something like a downwards looking triangle, and so on and so forth. I just don't have one at the moment, but you can be as creative as you like. And inside the, let me just make the graphic here a best fit, and like the text a bit bigger, make it maybe bold, maybe looks a bit more nice. Once again, design doesn't really matter at the moment. And this back button, I want to make sure that we are going to create now an on-click event, like so. We can put the script for the scene load trigger directly onto the button. And we want to make sure that we connect the button to itself over here inside the on-click event. And now we just call basically two things. We want to first call the load and then the unload as we did before. So we're going to go to scene load trigger. We can call interact. I believe so. We should. Since once again the interact functionality is going to be the one we want to actually talk to. I'm not quite sure if that now works, but we'll see. Otherwise, we just do not make use of interact, because we don't have to overwrite any other interactability directly inside over here. But we'll see. So the scene to load is going to be the actual, let me lock this selection. So the scene to load is going to be so the scene to unload is going to be the one we are currently in, and we want to go back to area 001. Gonna save, just in case, save again. And now I'm gonna go back to my main scene and see if that now works. So we want to first off go enter the building. Okay, it takes a sec. And now we want to check if we are able to go back. There we go. So as you can see, we can now load and unload both scenes. You can also see the other scene has been unloaded, so where the building has been in. No worries about it. So we can still make use of interact, because we created a rather solid interactable system where it doesn't really matter where we or what we are interacting with. We just pass in the correct parameters based on the possibility or the functionality of interact, and override whatever is inside interact, as we already learned over here. Nice. And once again, we still have the day running here. Once again, you can take a look. We're gonna lost like almost a centimeter on my screen. If I go inside that, this centimeter will persist. And this is the important thing. We're gonna be able now to keep things inside the main scene, like items, positions can be stored, and so on and so forth. We're gonna store all this information directly in the main scene. We just need to create the systems around them. And what we now want to make sure is that once again our user, our player, when we are like at here at this point, that our player is coming out of the building, like, and is going to be like standing next to the building. We need to maybe define a position, like a vector, where we want to land back into. Probably we can also store the already like the vector which we have basically lost over there, or whenever we just enter it. I just don't know if that would trigger interact, but I don't think so, since we don't use collisions at this point. So the main idea behind that would be just whenever we load, we store the information about the player, and then we bring it later on back to the position inside the area. Let me pretty quickly take a look into that, since if there is like a player inside, that's the first thing. We need to understand first if there is a player inside the scene, like this one. Is there a player? And if so, then we only want to store this information. Otherwise, you might want to empty out the complete vector, like wherever it has been at the point of leaving and not leaving the scene. So, and this is something we want to store probably inside. Where do we want to store that? I guess in the main scene. Because our game manager does or should know about this, and probably we're gonna make use of that directly in the scene handler. Should be possible. We can also put this into another basic script over here, but for the moment we have the scene handler instance, so we can directly update the last position of the player, so the last known position. We're gonna store this, and later on when we go back, we're gonna actually load the actual position of that. So how do we do this? Is, well, we create just a vector 3, I guess. Yep. And this is going to be the last player position. And whenever we are now going inside a scene, we might want to put a boolean inside here in our scene load trigger if we want to store the information whenever we leave the scene. And probably there's another one where we don't want to have that we are basically emptying out the vector. So I'm gonna put like a public bool save position, like so. And so whenever we want to save the position of the player whenever we are leaving the scene, then we just overwrite the vector. Otherwise we don't do it, and empty out the vector. So set back the vector back to be actually 0. So in that case, if we are like loading the scene over here, we're gonna do this, of course. But before we do this, and like whenever we do like this interactability over here, we want to say first if save position. So if we want to save the position, then we're gonna talk to the scene handler dot instance, and now we want to fill in the information inside the vector. Since the vector over here is not accessible because it has no public, we can make it public, or we just create something like a getter and setter. So we can grab the information and set the information. That could be work, or that should or might work, or we can create like a public functionality about it. So public void set vector, that works as well, or set player position, player POS. And we might want to talk to this always, and maybe we're gonna implement a bool, something like on or off. So what does it mean is whenever this is now on, if on, then we want to do the storing, otherwise we don't want to do this. And why do we do this is we want to empty out the actual vector, else we're gonna do the vector 3 last position. I'm gonna copy the name. So if it is true, then we want to store the last position of the vector, so we probably need to pass in a vector 3 here as well, otherwise we don't know where it is. That is still going to be the actual position. So The last player position is going to be equal to POS, like so. And otherwise, we're gonna set last player position to be equal to vector3.0. So we just empty this vector out. Something like this. We can also do it otherwise, so whenever we don't have the bool inside, so we just set it to whatever the position is going to be and do the actual measurement somewhere else, like directly in here in the scene load trigger. So what we now want to do is we just call the newly created functionality to store or save, do I name it? To set the player position. Set player position, and as arguments we're gonna say we put in save position as well as the actual player position over here, and we now need to grab the information about the player position anyhow. So what could be a good way to now trigger or get the information about that position of the player? We could put an argument in here, but if we do so, we're gonna have to do this like for the other ones, I believe so, as well. Maybe not. I'm not quite sure. But we can also do take the information from the actual collider object, or maybe the collider object plus whatever. So let's take transform.position over here. Transform.position. Probably we can make use of the transform whoever has we have collided with or interacted with. Yeah, probably that is not a bad idea. Let's try that out. So we're gonna take the transform.position like from our actual. I believe the actual collider should be the one. So if we are saving that, we're gonna do this, and otherwise we're gonna have to. No, that's a bad one. We always want to load this. We always want to load this because we want to always save or put the save position into our scene handler, so he always knows if he has to store this information or even not. So we always want to call this set player position no matter what, and we pass these parameters in, but we only set it to be inside the vector. Gonna save that script, or we're gonna only do this if that is actually on. Gonna save the information, and what we want to do is if we are coming back, like we gonna whenever we load another scene, we're gonna see what the vector is basically about and load the vector of that particular position, but only if we have not a vector 3 last player position. So in that case, we want to make sure that when we load a level, we're going to see what the vector is about, and according to that, set back the player to this. So probably it is better to have a connection to the player behavior and read the actual position and content from that. I guess that makes a bit more sense. So we always want to have a connection to the player, maybe. Or we just go and grab the player behavior in the current scene. Maybe that's not a bad idea, and then we set the position of the player to wherever the stored vector has been. Yeah, why not? Let's try that out. So in our scene handler, we want to make sure that our player now gets back, and we want to load the scene. Whenever the scene has been loaded, we need to the thing is, maybe we need to wait before we can set the player, so the system has enough time to load the complete scene. Maybe we're gonna do this whenever the other scene has been unloaded. so we can make sure that it has been loaded. Probably that works. Maybe we're gonna once again need to do this like asynchronously, but we unload that after half a second, or maybe we need to increment this information, or we're gonna put something in between. But let's test it out. So whenever we unload the scene, we wanna no, we can, maybe we can do something like if the scene has been loaded, like here. We load the scene additive over here, and if the scene has been loaded, the one we wanna actually do load, then we are setting the player to that. So we can do something like if last position is not equal to vector 3.0. Probably that doesn't make sense, but we'll see. Probably our player is going to sit on vector 3.0, but I guess not. Or we're gonna make sure that we store the bool as well. Then we're gonna have something like if has stored or not stored. Then we want to make sure that we find the game object. So we do game object.find. I don't like the method, but or we're gonna do something like find object of type. Find object of type. And we're gonna request the player behavior over here, and we wanna grab its transform dot position, and we wanna set it to be equal to our last player position. What does it say? Call to static member via a derived class name can be simplified. Probably we don't need to have game object. I don't know why that is, but that's new to me at least. Maybe that's more than enough. So we're gonna actually set now the player behavior's position. So basically the game object's player behavior position to be the last player position. We just need to make sure that there's only one player instance running at the moment, or player script inside the script. Otherwise it will just make use of the first one in this case. Let's test it out. We now need to make sure that we set it up correctly. So in area 1, in this one, we want to make sure that our trigger over here on our building, I'll go to 3D mode, so that this is going to be, we want to save the position here, like so. But on the other one, like inside our area 001B1, we don't wanna actually save the information. Like on this button, we don't need to save a position because there is no position relevant to this point. So that should be everything about this settings. Let's try that out. Let's see if that works. So we go here. We are now in our scene. Let's see if there are any console errors. None at the moment. And when I now go back, we are still at this position. So whenever we unload this other scene, maybe it's too early. So maybe we're gonna need to find a way anyhow to set this one in a different way. Probably not in a scene load, but in unload, of course. That's what we wanted to do initially. So I copy this and bring this into the unload. So if the scene has been loaded, then we're gonna unload the other scene and set the player position. Yeah, that does make sense. And I'm gonna comment this one out over here, just for the moment, because probably it doesn't make sense to have it here, but here in the unload, set player position. Okay, I'm gonna save, and let's see if that works now. Once the compiler is done running, I'm gonna press play again. We go here, enter the building, go back. Okay, so that does not work. That's bad. Maybe I can debug that. Debug.log. What do we need is actually we want to know the last player position whenever we do that. Oh, maybe we override it before we can actually do something. What is the initial position of our player in area 1? That's a good question, I guess. The player starts not at 000, that's good. So we get in our reference exception the scene load trigger at line 19 scene load trigger at line 19. So we wanna try to set the player position by using the save position and the transform position. Maybe we're gonna grab it from the player behavior. So find. I'm not quite sure why that is happening. Let's try. Let me undo this. Why is that now firing? This issue. Let's try again. Now it does that. Why does it do it? The player fires this info. The player has the player behavior is here. The position can be grabbed and read out over there as well. But why is it now triggering that error? Maybe because we are trying this in unload. And oh yeah, we're gonna unload the scene. And maybe that doesn't work. So we may need to store this information before we are unloading the scene. But even that shouldn't be any issue, I guess. We'll see. Player behavior. Okay, so it gets triggered from the player behavior in line 61, 62 to interact. Then no, we need to store this anywhere else. We need to store this anywhere else. So whenever we do interact, we might like whenever we do call this interact functionality, that we grab the information from the player, probably directly. So we do something like find object of type over here. Maybe that makes more sense. I don't know if that is correct or not. Of type player behavior, and grab its transform dot position. Oh, that was wrong. Dot transform dot position, like that. Okay, so we now grab the information from that before we load the new scene. We're gonna put it in here. Maybe we're gonna be able to do the same stuff over there as well. Let's try that. Maybe it cannot store the information, or maybe it does not have access to this script. Okay, there seems to be something strange going on. So we want to talk to the scene handler. We want to save the position by the boolean, whatever the input is, and we're gonna try to do this by just calling interact. Why the hell can we not put this info? What do we need? What is not accessible at the point we are interacting? Because over here it says it gets triggered by player behavior, like initially in the 45. Then it goes to 62. That's where the interact should happen. Let's take a look. So it calls interact over here if necessary, and if there is actually a targeted object, of course. If that is not equal to 0, then we're gonna do a targeted object.interact. We're gonna call now the scene load trigger inside this interactability, and if the scene to load is not empty basically, then we want to make sure that the set player position gets stored by the boolean, whatever it is. So if it is, it can be done like that, but anyhow it doesn't seem to have, I know, it cannot do this because we are not in the main menu scene. Haha. Of course, that's what is triggering, because the main scene contains our actual script here. And now we get something, that's good. So we get the information about it, but now we have another problem over there, that we're trying to interact with something which is not available, I guess. Let's see, no reference exception, scene load trigger line 19 is trying to grab the information, and as you can see it fires before we even leave the scene, so before we even load the other scene over there. So I try to go back now, but I can't because it actually gets stuck over there. So we need to have more time now before we can actually put the content together. So we need to wait if the other one has been loaded, basically. That's correct. We're gonna probably also wait until the unload is done. Probably we're gonna need to put in some timing, or even put this later on into the scene loader. Let's try again. So we wait until the other scene has been unloaded, so there should be more than enough time. Nope, it's still too quick. So in that case, we gonna take a look into the scene loader directly. So whenever we now call unload scene to unload, probably we need to do this a bit different. We give ourselves more time. So as you can see, it's a time-based action over there. I mean, it doesn't make a difference if we wait maybe 2 seconds over here to unload the other scene, I guess. Or once again, we need to actually find a way later on to do this asynchronously. So we are waiting for, or we're gonna wait until that completely happens, like the scene loading has happened completely. And after that, but that gets fired too quick. That problem is too quickly loaded. It's like instantly doing this, probably because of the button click. But the button click calls interact, and so we should have the coroutine still running over here. But when I click, it does not do the same stuff over there. Like after 2 seconds, it just tries to do this like instantly, I guess. But maybe it's the same issue. We are trying to set the position over here, and we try to find now a player behavior in the scene. That's why. Because we don't have a player in the scene. So now we need to put this into. We need to say if we have a safe position that we only do it this way. If we want to store this, we're going to put like that. And otherwise, What do we want to do otherwise? Otherwise, we basically don't need to do this, I guess. Or we're gonna put in a vector 3, 0. Nope, we don't want to. Or maybe we want. Like over here, we're gonna pass in vector 3 dot 0. The thing is, if we do it here, we do not do this, or we don't need to set this vector 2 or the vector 3 position over here like that, because we can always put this on 0, 0, 0, or you know, on the other one. So basically this step is not necessary anymore, I guess. So let's try again. I hope I have saved now. So we go in, we have to wait now 2 seconds, a bit too long, but now we go back. After 2 seconds we probably, nope, we don't bring our player to this point. That's bad. What is the problem of that? Let's try to put this in here, like in front, before we unload the other scene, and see what's going on. That's really strange. If you guys have any ideas, of course, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, we gonna do, or I gonna try to figure this out and probably explain what I did in the next one, because that just consumes quite some time. As you can see, there's some strange issue going on over here. That we are unable to load this. Or actually, in this case, we are not able to set the player behavior at this point. Why is that so? We could do something like put this like into an on-enable. No, we can't. That doesn't make sense either. But we could read the last player position anytime we are loading a scene, or anytime the player gets loaded, and read it from there. So we set it whenever the scene, like whenever the player gets loaded. That should be another possibility. So we basically, whenever we load, we're gonna set it to the last player position. No, that doesn't make sense as well. Because that can, at the first place, be a 0, 0, 0, could be somewhere in the building. I don't know. I can't find the issue why that is not working at the moment. Probably we're gonna try again to enable this at this point and disable that at this point, and save and see if that might be something. Maybe it's the issue about the vector 3.0 over here. Maybe we're gonna put another boolean over there. I don't know. Maybe we're gonna wait until the scene has been loaded, like whatever this name is, or the scene is, and then we're gonna try to update the transform position of the player. Because the debug line runs correctly over here, we get the correct vector, I guess. So if we check this one out, we cannot see this directly because it is a child of something. But it stores the information, and when we go back, maybe it loads it also correctly. Where is the player located? No, the player is on a different spot. So if I would put it on, what was the number? 10? Let's try again. Let me try to get the info. Okay, now it doesn't even trigger the position, or it doesn't store the position, it seems. Oh, it does. I just don't need to, I just need to make sure that I store this information, or just debug that line over here. Try again, get into it. Nope, it doesn't fire. So this part over here, before we load a new scene, we might want to store this information over here. No. Or yes? We need to find out if they're... I'm gonna confuse... it seems I'm gonna confuse myself over here. So... let me get rid of that. And let me get rid of that. So before we unload, or whenever the scene has been loaded, we have the possibility to find the object of that and set the player position of that. So that's the first one. So and set it to be the last player position over here. We want to make sure that this works. If we can't find that position, then we don't want to load this. So what is the problem? Why can't we do this? Probably we get now in our reference over here. Okay, so it seems to store the information to minus 10.6. Gonna make a screenshot from that, just to see if the numbers are going to be correct. And when I would go back, I would get another reference exception, I guess. Oh, no, there we go. So that worked. So it was loading it here, not there. And we're gonna have to update the navmesh agent, I guess. So what it did is it actually put me onto vector 3.000, so it doesn't get overridden completely correct, it seems. So when I go here to this area, and I'm gonna set the player now to the numbers, so minus 10, minus 10,6, and the other one is minus 7, minus 7,5. This is the last stored position. So basically this seems to be correct. But what happens anywhere is it gets overwritten to be 000 inside the unload handler, and that's what we want to avoid. We don't want to reset this. We want to make sure that it is coming back where it should be. So the last player position should not be vector 3.0 at this point. And then we just need to set the destination of the agent inside the player behavior. So I believe we're gonna need to do it a bit different. So we cannot just position that guy. We need to set the position and the agent of the player behavior to be the correct position at all, because we are using the navmesh agent completely. So we're gonna load this. Whenever we save, we wanna grab the player transformed position, and that's happening. Otherwise, we wanna set it back to be vector 3.0, so we don't have any strange issues. Whenever we are not saving the position, we're gonna set it to be vector 3.0, and that's the problem, I believe, because whenever we leave the old scene, that could be the issue. We override it with vector 3.0, so basically maybe we don't want to do this. Maybe we don't want to set this being a vector 3.000, because the scene handler over here that might not be might not be even called whenever we don't have a vector 3.0. So let's try that out once again. There we go. So that once again we get the null reference exception because we cannot call this functionality because there is no player behavior at the current position. Why is that now? That's pretty strange. Is it because of that I just disabled this? Oh, nope, it's not because of that. It's because we did I did the same problem or the same error or mistake. I did the same mistake because we need to load from the main scene, of course. That's why we have no access to scene manager or to the scene handler in this case. So let's test it out again. We go in, we wait 2 seconds, then we go back, and now we come out of this point. So that's what we wanted. That's good. So that works. Now we want to update the nefmesh agent from the player directly. So later on I need to reconstruct the complete action over here. So the agent.destination needs to be overwritten over here. So we need to have access to the nefmesh agent over there. Anyhow, so in that case we're gonna create probably another public void set position, something like that. We're gonna put the actual goal vector inside over here, vector POS. We only want to do this on load, meaning we're gonna set the transform.position to be equal to whatever POS is, and we want to set our agent.destination to be equal to POS as well, so we don't have any strange movement going on. And now we just call set position over here, and instead of doing .transform.position we just say set position, and that's let's see, we don't even need to put in the vector because we know, we need to do this. We need to take the stored vector. The stored vector is going to be the last. Nope. This information is not available for us at this point. Good question. Where do we get now the last position from? Oh, we get them from our scene. Oops. Our scene handler doesn't know it, so we're gonna say scene handler dot instance dot, and the scene handler should have the last player position. And now we want to read it. So once again we can make it public, or we just grab it. So we just return it. We can say public vector 3 and name this get get last POS, and what we just want to return is basically the last player position. And in our scene load trigger, we're gonna go to that and say get last POS, open close parentheses, and now we should be able to return it and get the vector 3 back. Is there any parenthesis mistake? Yep, gonna need to have another one, I guess. That's that. Cannot convert the second argument into a vector. What does it need? It does need a vector, doesn't it? Okay, let me just grab it extra here. Vector 3 POS is equal to scene handler dot instance dot get last position, and here we're gonna put inside set position, we just put in POS and close the pair of parentheses. Oh, we're gonna set the player position to be its own position. No, that doesn't make sense. No. Transform dot position. No, we need to do this not here. We need to do this on here, I guess. Yeah, we're gonna call whenever we load the correct one, of course, from here we need to do this, not from the scene saver. Basically, we're gonna need to do this over here. We're gonna say set position, and now we're gonna put in the last player position in here, of course. Over here it doesn't make sense because here we just store the information. We just save that info, and that's not necessary. That's how it works, or should work. Save again, save scene handler, save player behavior if necessary, and now try again. That should now set the agent back after 2 seconds. Probably can do this a bit faster because 2 seconds seem to be quite long. But he still wants to go there. That's interesting. So the agent.destination is not going to be set to be the position over here. Did I forget to save? I'm not quite sure. But it seems that I have saved everything. Yeah, that's a bit strange. Probably I need to reconstruct it a bit. I'm gonna reduce this time over here because it seems that 2 seconds is quite too long anyways. But why does it want to go to its initial position, like this position over here? Why can't we just... That works quite well. But why doesn't it go, or why doesn't it stay where it is? Maybe we don't need to reposition that. Maybe we just need to set the... Maybe that is not necessary. Maybe I can just set the agent's destination. The downside is probably... Or maybe we need to do this. What does work? We're gonna move inside the update loop. And we set the agent's destination to be equal to the target over here. So we need to overwrite target. So in that case, we don't set agent destination to be equal to position. We're gonna set target to be equal to position, and that should fix the problem. Target is equal to position. And probably to make it better, we're gonna set it automatically to the position so we don't have any hiccups inside over here. Let's try again. So I go inside, should be here, go back, and we pop back, and we're gonna stay where we are, and from that point now we have the possibility to go wherever we want to. Pretty good. So it's a bit better. As you can see, we have like still a small hiccup or pop-up thing because it's not doing it fast enough, but on the other hand, you could probably try to reduce the time to be 0.1 seconds, so we have like an instant one. But also later on, when we're gonna play around with the transition, we probably don't see this popping back and forth here anyways. It still is available, or it still is visible, but in the end I don't think we're gonna see this because we gonna play an animation, or we just overlay it with something like with a fade in fade out thing where we probably needs a sec or two, so we don't see this popping back and forth later on as well. Maybe we're gonna make a transition between those so that it is not actually visible, like once again with a black overlay screen or whatever, or maybe something like with a loading screen and so on and so forth. But I believe for the moment I'm kind of happy with the result. So we got the scene transitioning finally running over here. Well, the scene movement, like interacting between those two, and we can go trigger this from a button. We can trigger interact like with the actual collision objects we wanted. We just now need to make sure that whenever we test something, that the main scene is going to be an active scene. So how can we do this? We can once again always make sure that the main scene is running over here meanwhile we are testing things in and out. So, but if we are doing so and we now would go inside that, we probably have a problem that nothing is, or that the stuff is not working completely correct as it should. But now you can see we can simply go back and forth between those scenes. We have the camera transition over here as well. But again, if we give ourselves like 1 second for the transition as a time, then we don't see the camera movement and we don't see the like the bit in and out back and forth hopping over here, and that's pretty good so far. So this actually concludes my live stream over here. I know it was a bit troublesome here and there, but that is the only way to learn new things. It's like when you get in trouble with some kind of a content like that, it can happen that you need to struggle or actually reconfigure things like testing out back and forth, debug lines, see if the positions are correctly stored, and so on and so forth. But that is the issue everybody is going to have in the future. So you can have super much knowledge about coding and stuff, but in the end it might turn out that one or the other thing is not working as it should or you expect it to work. It's like the same as setting the agent's destination to a position, but in the end we override it later on inside the update loop. So we're gonna need to get to the correct target and then retarget that from this point. So for everyone still going to, or whoever is still inside the stream, thanks a lot for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. And once again, don't forget to check the description box down below where you can see, or where you can grab your free PDF about how to finish your game, my 3 strategies to finish your game. just go down, drag it or grab it. It's free. As well as check out all my online courses you can purchase down below as well. There are several links about different topics, and probably one or the other one is going to be for you. Once again, thanks a lot for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the stream, even if it was a bit troublesome. But I hope to see you for or inside the next streams available. Thanks a lot once again, and have a nice one. Bye bye.